Welcome back to Brojo Online. Let me cross myself before this one, not that I'm religious. Today I wanted to do something that I've been meaning to do for a very long time, and that is to address the red pill ideology, or philosophy as red pillers might call it. The reason I've left it so long is because it seemed to be outside of my wheelhouse. I'm trying to help men be confident. I'm not looking to attack anyone else's ideas specifically. But I've come to a place now where so many of the people I'm trying to help are so negatively affected by this ideology, and it holds them back so much in the areas that I'm trying to help them with, namely dating and relationships and personal self-confidence, that I wanted to make a post to deal with it. Before I go anywhere with this, I want to make it clear who this is for. If you are a red pill devotee, if you are 100% entrenched in this ideology, you think it is the absolute truth, you have no doubts, you'll fight to the death to protect it, then there's no point in you watching this or listening to this. I'm not going to change your mind. Because we're going to be talking about how factual the claims made by Red Pill are. And if you really wanted to know that, you'd already have some doubts. If you're already all in on Red Pill, then look, I wish you the best and maybe bookmark this and come back to it if you ever have doubts one day. Who this is really for is the people who have some sort of doubts. One is you doubt that the claims are actually factual, that what red pill ideology generally talks about may not be based in full truth. And two, and I think more importantly, you doubt that following this ideology is actually helpful or healthy. See, it's not so much about the truth, because there is some cherry-picked bits of truth within their ideology. It's more so about whether or not following this ideology actually leads to a higher quality of life. And the main reason I want to make this particular episode is because I really strongly believe it does not. In fact, I believe it does the opposite. I know both men and women who, after they get into the rabbit hole of the red pill, they're worse off, not better off. And I don't think that that's a coincidence. I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that my way of doing things or my belief system is the only alternative to the red pill. I'm not trying to sell something here. There's lots of other ways you could go. You could go Stoicism, there's other coaches, there's men's groups, there's Buddhism. There's all kinds of different ways you could go that are not the red pill approach. I just want to talk to the people who have some doubts, who have some wiggle room, who are open to being critical in their thinking about this thing, so they might have a chance in the future of both healthy relationships and true inner confidence. So, what I'm going to do is address what I think are the top 10 red pill claims that really make up almost the commandments of the ideology, or at least the core tenets of the ideology. I'm going to address each of them one at a time. We're going to look at what the red pill claim is, kind of steel man their argument. We're going to look at what the science actually says. We're going to look at my personal counters. And then I'm going to try and explain why I think people believe what the red pill ideology says, despite that it's probably not true. And then we'll look at alternative positions that you could take that would be more helpful to your quality of life and to your ability to create high confidence in relationships. Now, any claims that I make in this, either about what the red pill ideology is or counterclaims around what the science says, in the written version of this will be all the links and sources and citations. Okay, so I'm not straw manning Red Pill. I'm getting this directly often from the Great Red Pill Forum on Reddit or the most popular Red Pill podcasts and books, the people who are definitely Red Pillers. I'm getting it from what they say, and not just what one or two people say, but what they all generally agree on and repeat often. And I'm going to include sources to back that up. And then my counterclaims are going to be based in the strongest science that I could find. So, let us begin. Number one, women are hypergamous by nature, sometimes referred to as the 80-20 principle of dating. It's this idea that women are biologically wired to seek out the top 20% of men and that they will trade up whenever given the chance, that they have no real sense of sort of loyalty or interest in the bottom 80%, that if anything, they would settle for someone there while looking to trade up, like somebody who's settling for a job but always looking for a better opportunity, will always take a promotion if they can get one. Women basically see men in the same way, kind of like what we see in some mammalian species. Lions, for example, the pride will switch over to the new male lion if he defeats the old male lion. If he's a stronger, tougher male, the pride will just switch their allegiance to them. Even though that's not even strictly how it happens, it's more like they will be raped, their children will be killed, and then he'll dominate them by force. It's not like they're just trading up on some flimsy whim. But basically, that's how red pillars see women is like, even if they're with you, if you're not a top 20% guy, it's only a matter of time before they cheat on you or leave you for a guy who is. Their backing for this is some very loose, very cherry-picked associations with evolutionary psychology and mostly, from what I see, anecdotal evidence. Okay, so mostly they talk about times when this happened to some guy that they know or to themselves, and they interpret what happened as being hypergamy. A girl left them for someone else, and they interpret it as basically her climbing the male status ladder. Particularly when it comes to financial independence, they seem to think that money's a big deal, looks are a big deal, social status and power is a big deal, that basically a woman is only as faithful as her options according to this hierarchy. Now, scientific research pretty clearly counters this, frankly. It does acknowledge that women may have some preferences and some sense of attraction towards certain traits like status and ability. Some women prefer those things. So do men. They have certain traits that are physical that they're more interested in. In fact, men are more likely to be unfaithful physically than women are. So men are more likely to be hypergamous in terms of physical traits than women are to be in terms of status of the man. But long-term mate selection, long-term relationships is very rarely based on these traits. It's usually based on mutual attraction, kindness, emotional stability, compatibility. And this is backed up by the studies.
What is more important in a man, financial stability or emotional stability?
Emotional. Yes, definitely.
Emotional stability.
Emotional stability.
Emotional. Emotional.
Oh, she's thinking.
Oh.
She's thinking.
Oh. Emotional?
Okay.
Emotional stability.
Emotional stability is really important for me, and then we can figure out being financially stable.
I like that.
Yeah, I feel like emotional stability because I think financial is it's not that hard to get.
So basically, what the science says is if you're a kind, healthy, decent person, you find someone who you're quite compatible with, you can be relatively assured of their loyalty despite whoever else comes along, like higher status, better looking, taller, or whatever. Those aren't going to be factors you need to worry about. Now, my personal opinion on this is a couple of things. One is, yes, there are some women who are like this. And there are men who are like this. There are men who will cheat anytime a hotter girl gives them an opportunity. There are women who will cheat anytime a guy with a Lamborghini says, "Do you want to ride?" But these people are a rarity. Okay, they're an extreme end of the spectrum. Extremely disloyal, narcissistic, psychopathic, superficial, no way representative of the greater group. There's the other extreme as well. There are people who will be loyal to the worst of the worst. I used to work with criminals. There are people who are dead loyal to them even though they rank the lowest in the hierarchy. There are very attractive women who will stay with a gang member who's locked inside and she never gets to see him, and he's awful to her, and he's broke, and he's ugly, and he has no status, and she'll stay loyal to him for the rest of her life. Like there is that end of the spectrum as well, and most people, as in the classic bell curve of normal distribution, are somewhere in the middle. Generally, when you study successful long-term relationships, you find that the reasons people stay together have very little to do with the superficial, materialistic outside image. What I've found is if you're out there dating superficial women, or if you're just out there dating in general, a woman will leave you for a better offer if you are not providing a deep connection. If you're not someone she can connect with deeply and emotionally and become emotionally invested in, which has nothing to do with wealth or status or power, but to do with how you connect interpersonally, then it does become about how you look, or how much fun the other person is, or how popular they are. That's kind of like the default backward setting. Just like a guy, if he's got two girls to choose from and they're both airheads that he can't connect with, he'll choose the hotter one. But if the slightly less attractive one is way more kind and creates a sense of peace in him and pleases him sexually and sees eye to eye on like common values and surprises him with the strength of her belief system, then he'll stick with her. I've seen many dating gurus, many ex-pickup artists who are training others and so on, end up settling for girls that are less attractive objectively than the ones they used to date because this other girl brought more to the table emotionally than those girls did. And that becomes like a trump card. It becomes a veto for all the other factors. Red pillers often refer to divorce statistics to back up the claim of hypergamy. They say women initiate most divorces. And firstly, this is based mostly on US statistics. When you go globally, those statistics change. But even if it is true, when you look at the reasons why people get divorced, it's not because she found a hotter guy or she found a guy who makes more money. It's usually because he didn't put enough work into the relationship. That's the number one cited reason for divorce is a sense of inequality in the effort made towards the relationship. The average divorce happens 8 years into the marriage. Right? That's not some superficial choice. That's not a girl like bouncing from one guy to another like a bee with flowers. 8 years means you put in the work. And many of them, of course, are more than 8 years, and of course, some of them are less. But you don't stick with someone 8 years and then suddenly become hypergamous. I mean, in 8 years, you're going to get all these sorts of offers, and there's going to be all these men available. If you really were hypergamous, you wouldn't last 8 years with a low status man and then divorce him. They put 8 years of hard work into the relationship and then finally gave up. And I've worked one to one with many of the guys and girls of divorced couples, and it's clear that that's the reason. Right? That somebody was putting in all the work and the other person wasn't, and they just got sick of it. So why do red pillars believe this? Well, because they want to explain why girls don't stay with them. And they want to explain it in a way that lets them off the hook. If I can say, you left me because the other guy's richer, I don't have to do any work on myself. I don't have to admit that I was a crappy boyfriend, or that I was closed off emotionally, or that I'm not a kind person, or that I'm fixated on transactional relationships. I don't have to look at any of that. I don't have to take responsibility for being too much of a nice guy, or being too selfish, or being too lazy. I don't have to take responsibility for any of that. I can just say, you're a superficial bitch. It's out of my hands. So it's a great way of just letting go of responsibility and blaming a whole gender for your own flaws so that you don't have to look at them. It's also because if you are this kind of guy who cannot connect well with women, then you're going to repeatedly have this kind of experience. You're only going to attract the most superficial and materialistic woman, and therefore you're going to get cheated on, and they are going to leave you for a better deal. And you're going to be circling through this shallow end of the gene pool with women. You're going to be only dating a cluster of the worst women and thinking that that represents all women. One thing you often see with Red Pill podcasts and videos is them out on the street interviewing people or in a little studio with a range of men and women around the table. And if you notice, there's only a specific type of woman they're ever talking to. They're usually out at night talking to girls who are going clubbing, girls who are very clearly all about looking good, or they have OnlyFans prostitutes and they're interviewing them. This is a very small subsection of women. And it's the only kind of woman they ever really interact with. They're not going to book clubs. They're not talking to university professors. They're not talking to nurses, right? They're not talking to the full range of women. They're just talking to a very specific range and they're getting the same results over and over and thinking that's all women. So what's the alternative view here? Well, it's responsibility. If you are constantly having problems in your relationships, it's not the other people who are the problem. It's you. And that's probably right from the beginning. You are associating with, attracted to, and attracting the worst type of people. If people are constantly leaving you for a better deal, if you have to put on a show with money and looks in order to get someone, then you're the one making the mistake. Where are you meeting your woman? How are you connecting with them emotionally? Are you showing the traits that maintain long-term relationships, like connectivity, humor, kindness, emotional stability? The alternative, and I think this is the alternative to all of the red pill ideology, is work on yourself, making yourself a more confident person, rather than trying to control others. Just going to quickly interrupt this message to tell you about a great opportunity for you. Now, if you're the kind of person who wants to live with integrity and become really confident and socially adept, then I'd like to invite you to come and join my Brojo community on School. This is the premier free community for people who want to build their confidence, become socially adept, and learn to live with pure integrity. As a member, you'll gain access to comprehensive discussions on how to be more confident, courses and coaching and support from senior members to help you develop your progress on your specific goals. Our members have quite literally transformed their lives. We really focus on what actually works and gets results, and we make sure we stick with you until you get those results. And as a bonus for joining, you'll actually get my Nice Guy Recovery and Confidence Building course absolutely free. So join us today, start your journey towards unbreakable self-confidence. Click on the link below or search for Brojo School online, and we'll see you in there. Claim number 2, men must become high value to attract and keep women. So this is an extension from what we just talked about, this idea that men need to be in that top 20% to attract a woman, that they're measured by status, money, physique, social dominance, and things like that. And this is based off of the hypergamy principle. So the reason they believe this is that if you need to be in the top 20% to attract a woman, then there's like the sexual marketplace, and you have to improve yourself to increase yourself into that top 20% and give yourself more options, better chances. If hypergamy is true, then this would make sense. The scientific counterclaim is what we've already talked about, is that true relationship satisfaction is about traits that have nothing to do with all of that. Emotional intelligence, having a secure attachment style, mutual support of each other, putting in that equal work into the relationship, having shared experiences, having a shared value system. None of this has anything to do with a hierarchy. You're not in competition with other people. Like if I have shared values with someone else, it's not like I'm competing with other people because everyone's got different values. It's just me and her clique. Nobody else can compete with a clique.
Would you rather date a 10 with a bad personality or a 6 with a good personality?
6 with a good personality. I think personality goes a long way because then it's just easier to get along that way, and you probably have more similar values or things that you could get along versus if it's just like, sure, they're good looking, but is that going to last long term?
Yes, like don't get me wrong, looks are good, but then that's going to dissipate when you're older. And I feel like I'd rather have a 6 because a 6 is way better than a 2. So we'll take that.
Do women really want men to open up, or do they just say that?
No, I really think that women need men to open up because I feel like that's just like the peak of the relationship. Like once the woman starts to realize that the man can't give them emotional connection, I feel like that's usually why a lot of relationships end.
I agree. Like as we both do couples therapy and as therapists, I think communication is literally key, how everyone says, but it does go a long way, especially whenever you can talk about your emotions because we're emotional creatures. We're never not feeling, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And then oftentimes if there's conflict, it's usually having to do with emotions. So if you're both emotionally aware and insightful, you can navigate that conversation in a more healthy manner. And then also to express our needs, right? Because a lot of us have emotional needs in relationships. And if we don't identify those or know what our emotional needs are, then how is the other person supposed to meet your needs?
I appreciate it.
This is so cool. What is the podcast
Oh, it's called Women on Men. If you want, I can.
Even if value is the thing, value is subjective. All right, everybody's into different stuff. There are some women who only want rich guys. There are some women who hate wealthy people. There are women who prioritize authenticity, sense of humor, emotional connection over things like status. And these are all things that any guy could develop. He's not in competition with anyone. You can have your own sense of humor. That's not a competition. There are people out there who you don't think are funny at all, but somebody else thinks is hilarious. It's totally subjective. My own personal view of this, through my own experience and with coaching others for such a long time, is that, yes, like I said before, you will have to compete if that's the criteria that you compete on. If you make it about status and wealth and power and good looks, then that's what you'll be competing on. You'll be in the marketplace with all the other people in the marketplace. But if you go up to someone, you create a deep emotional connection with them and you see eye to eye on core values, and they feel heard when they listen to you and they're interested in your philosophy, there is no competition anymore. You ever notice when people get into that bubble and there's just no chance for anybody else? You might have seen it at a party or some event where a guy and a girl have just gotten into that little sort of high friction bubble that, like, they're together tonight. Like, no one's going to get in the way of that. Like, nobody else has a chance. That doesn't come from status. That doesn't come from the hierarchy. Yes, women will be attracted. Yes, they will swoon when the celebrity with the good looks walks into the room. But not every woman wants to be in a relationship with that guy. All right, just like not every man wants an Instagram model for a wife. All right, we all have different preferences. And even when we have attraction preferences, that's not the same as relationship preferences. Like, I can be attracted to all kinds of women based on the way they look, but I don't want to marry almost any of them. I don't want to be with them, and it goes both ways. Most of the women I've spoken to, they have gone through a phase where they were overwhelmed by what they're attracted to, and then they learn some hard lessons. Those guys who are all about status and wealth and physique are usually quite psychopathic and narcissistic. They're horrible to be in relationships with. They're disloyal. They're emotionally blocked. Once women get over the age of 30, they've had enough of all that, in the most part, and they prefer something a bit more real. And I'm telling you right now, in my own personal experiment and working with others, being real is the trump card. If you're the most real person in the room, you have no competition. If everything that comes out of your mouth is radically honest and you have no shame about who you are, it's a unit of one. You're in competition with no one. Even if the other guy's really good looking and rich and all that, he's going to look like a fraud next to you. It's going to actually lower his attractiveness when he's putting on the show and it becomes really obvious because you're not. So why do red pillars believe this stuff? It's the same as what I was talking about before. When you stay in the same cluster, when you play the game, then you will be affected by the rules of the game. If you're in there like using seduction and your wealth and status and everything to try and win over ADD club girls and OnlyFans prostitute type girls, then yeah, you are going to be in competition. It is going to be a sexual market value competition. But if you're real and you're looking for healthy, secure women in all the right places, you're not going to be in a competition. Once you click with someone, the competition ends. Nobody else can compete with that. It doesn't matter what else they got going on.
Have you ever been in love?
Yes, I have. I feel like it's actually the first love I've experienced that's calm and healthy. I feel more secure now and I don't feel as all over the place. I feel like this person really grounds me. I've discovered a lot about myself as well being with this person, and I feel like that's what being in love is about.
Were you ready for a healthy relationship?
I wasn't ready for a relationship at all. I actually was friends with this person before. I really learned it's not about like love at first sight or like finding someone attractive. It's really like what comes within, and like that was beautiful.
Was it hard to go from a toxic relationship to a healthy one?
It really has been, because I still have like tendencies of like acting in a ways that I did in an unhealthy relationship. That's gonna happen when you're like healing and you're growing. I'm grateful that I actually have this experience and opportunity to like fall in love in a healthy way.
How does your current partner help you heal from your toxic ways?
She's made me feel safe talking about all things. I've been through a lot of trauma, and she's definitely come from a background where she's heard a lot of things too and like had trauma, and I feel like she knows how to really help me navigate my emotions, and that's something that I've struggled with.
But most red pillars have stayed in the game, and so they only have the experience of the game. They only know what it's like to be with women who are like that and to engage with women from that place. They've always been in the competition. They don't know that there's a whole world outside the competition where the competition doesn't happen. The alternative, I'd suggest, if you want to focus on one thing, radical honesty. Instead of trying to prove that you're awesome, reveal that you're not. Show that you're ordinary. Show that you have insecurities and weaknesses. Be proud of your strengths as much as your failures. Let everything go. Speak to women like they're your best friend. You got nothing to hide already. Stop trying to get with them. Let them choose. Just go, this is what I'm like. Do what you want with that information. And that, ironically, is very attractive. And there's no competition for it. She'll either love you for being like that or she won't. It's already predetermined by her preferences. And I don't mean her attraction preferences, but her deeper connection preferences. Point number 3, female nature is solipsistic and manipulative. Basically, it's this idea that women are inherently self-centered, selfish. They're driven by emotions just wildly. They're prone to rationalizing their selfish behavior. Basically, they're evil, and all they care about is themselves and their own pleasure. Where do they get this information from? A lot of cherry picking, generally speaking. Studies that they saw in some magazine once, pop psychology interpretations of deeper evolutionary psych that you can't draw conclusions like that from. And of course, the so-called field experience, where they go out approaching random women, usually nightclub type women, and they portray them as disloyal and flaky. Kind of like if I interviewed 100 women, I found 3 that were like this, and then I only showed you videos of those 3, and I just did this over and over again, you get the impression that all women were like this. So some women are, definitely. So are some men, because some humans are, okay? Some humans are solipsistic and manipulative. Some humans are highly psychopathic. They have antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder. It's prevalent in both men and women. In fact, it's more prevalent in men. A man is more likely to have a personality disorder that makes him manipulative and solipsistic or self-centered. So if anyone's doing this, it's the guys. And that's basically what the science says. The science says there's just no backing for this claim. There's no real data saying that this is true. If anything, women are more likely to be empathetic. They're more likely to be able to take on the perspective of somebody else and care about somebody else's needs more than their own. And both genders can be self-serving. You know, a view of women as uniquely manipulative is just confirmation bias. If you looked at humans, you'd see a certain percentage of humans are highly manipulative, and a certain percentage are highly empathetic, and so on, and it's got nothing to do with gender, essentially. That's if you want to actually look at neuroscience and real science rather than just watching the whatever podcast. Now, I've personally worked with a lot of very manipulative people working in criminal justice, and yeah, my experience is much the same. I mean, most criminals are men, and most of the crimes that involve manipulation, con artistry, psychopathy, also men. So it stands to reason that their gender relationship with being manipulative is represented in the criminal world. Obviously, the more manipulative and deceptive you are, the more likely you are to get into trouble with the law. But what I found is that people are manipulative. It's not a gender thing. People are self-centered. It's not a gender thing. But if anybody's more likely to care about your feelings, more likely to care about getting your needs met, it's going to be a woman, not a man. So why do the red pillars believe this? Again, this relieves responsibility. If we can write women off as this subspecies that cannot be dealt with in terms of emotional connection because they are just psychopathic narcissists, then we can justify treating them as objects. We can justify using manipulation ourselves to deceive them into getting our needs met. We can justify transactional relationships. We don't have to look at them as human. It's just dehumanizing them. That's all it is, so that we can get away with treating them badly and not taking responsibility for our own flaws. Now, I have no doubt that many red pillars feel that all women are like this because all the women in their life have been like this, but this is that cluster effect bias. They've only been dating a very small niche of women because that's the only ones they're able to attract or get anywhere near, because the healthy women are staying away from them. I think the key here to breaking this belief and looking at challenging it is actually quite a practical one. You need to go to different places to meet women, okay? It's not in the online apps, not in the nightclubs or the bars, not even street approaches. You want to go to places with people with a bit of depth and artistic creativity might go, like dance classes, or political meetup groups, or philosophy studies, or anything where somebody who is just self-centered narcissist with no interest in other people just wouldn't want to go. I mean, just look at the logic. Who's more likely to be a nurse, a man or a woman? A role that requires nothing but empathy and caring for other people. If women are really solipsistic and selfish, why the fuck would they do that for a job? It makes no sense. But if you've had a terrible mother and terrible luck with women, or not luck, but terrible decision making with women, and you've ended up with, it only takes to have a few women like this in your life, one that divorces you and cuts you in half, and suddenly you're going to feel like all women are like this. There's over 3 billion women in the world. How many have you met? Just going to quickly interrupt this message to tell you about a great opportunity for you. Now, if you're the kind of person who wants to live with integrity and become really confident and socially adept, then I'd like to invite you to come and join my Brojo community on School. This is the premier free community for people who want to build their confidence, become socially adept, and learn to live with pure integrity. As a member, you'll gain access to comprehensive discussions on how to be more confident, courses and coaching and support from senior members to help you develop your progress on your specific goals. Our members have quite literally transformed their lives. We really focus on what actually works and gets results, and we make sure we stick with you until you get those results. And as a bonus for joining, you'll actually get my Nice Guy Recovery and Confidence Building course absolutely free. So join us today, start your journey towards unbreakable self-confidence. Click on the link below or search for Brojo School online, and we'll see you in there. Point number 4, emotional vulnerability makes men weak and unattractive. Now, this is an interesting one. So basically, they're saying if you show any sort of emotional softness, what they probably call femininity, any insecurity or any neediness, you're going to repel a woman. So you have to show all the opposite. You basically just show psychopathic traits. You have to be basically this dark triad man who feels nothing of anything feminine whatsoever. He's just all about aggression and control. Otherwise, you're going to lose them. Women are only attracted to strong, stoic men, and they'll lose respect for any man who wants comfort or emotional connection. What does the science say? The science says that men who express emotions in healthy ways are perceived as more trustworthy, more relatable, especially in long-term relationships. Emotional suppression, of course, is associated with poor mental health, suicide, and lowered relationship satisfaction. Basically, if you want to keep your woman happy, you've got to stay emotionally connected to her. Being stoic might look good in the movies. James Bond was a fun character. But in real life, women divorce guys like that because they lose the sense of connection. They may be attracted to the strong, silent type, but after a few years with them, they want something better. If nothing else, the main issue I have with this claim is that it's bad for your mental health to follow this. So forget relationships and attracting women for a second. If you suppress your emotions, you are going to get sick. It is not good for you. I do understand the argument that how you express them matters.
One thing that men really need to understand about women is that women respond to safety. And even if you are a male that is financially, very abundant, you've done very well for yourself in life, you're very successful, you have no issue going after the things that you want in life and the things that you build for yourself, if you haven't developed emotional intelligence, which means being able to self-reflect, take accountability for your actions, look at past behaviors and seek to improve or seek to become a better person, and do that without defaulting to blame, women will pick up on this and your ability to be able to do that, irrelevant of what you showcase on the surface. So
if I treat every woman I talk to like a therapist, yeah, they're not going to be attracted to me, and I'm actually not going to get much better in terms of my mental health. Expressing emotions has to come with that number one thing that red pillers don't like: personal responsibility. You have to own the way you feel. It is your job to deal with it. If you have problems, it's your job to solve them. That doesn't mean you can't get help from others or lean on others. But you need to give people a sense that you are not delivering a burden unto them, that you got this with or without them. Now, if they want to be part of it, that's great. But if not, you are not propped up by them. Nobody wants a patient for a partner unless they are exceptionally ill themselves. Showing weakness, flaws, and failures is actually one of the key elements to deeply attracting and connecting with someone. All right, if they can relate to your suffering, and you can show that despite the suffering, you are going to get the job done, you are going to keep your life together, it's incredibly attractive. They feel like they've found their soulmate. when you both relate on the darkness rather than just the light. Why do red pillers believe this? I think probably because most of them have been hurt when they tried to express emotions, and they didn't realize that the bad reaction they got was for two reasons. One is the way they expressed themselves was probably victim-based rather than responsible, and secondly, they chose the wrong people to do it with. Again, we have this main problem, like all the red pillars I've ever known personally have all dated the same types of women over and over again that match what their mother was like and the bullies in their high school and everything. They've only stuck with the worst of the worst. So of course, if you open up to someone like that, you're going to get slammed. And even if you open up to someone who's kind and compassionate, there's only so much victim that they can handle. There's only so much complaining and whinging that they can handle. Opening up and expressing yourself is not the same as going, poor me, please rescue me. All right, I can say that makes me sad without saying like, what am I going to do about it? And just say, yeah, that makes me really sad. I'm probably going to need to go for a walk to help get over that. To show that stability, that you have your own emotional regulation sorted. And fact is, if you don't, which is okay, a lot of people don't, you shouldn't even be thinking about relationships yet. How are you supposed to have a secure attachment with someone else if you can't even handle the experience and the expression of basic human emotions? That should be your primary focus for now. Forget other people. You should be working on learning how to feel the full range of emotions, express them anytime they come up without drowning in them or drowning others.
Our person is someone who comes along at a time in our life where we're working on our stuff. We haven't fixed it all. We're still working on it. They understand the DNA of our particular trauma or healing journey, or maybe through conversation, they come to understand it. They have enough compassion and enough empathy that they come to understand it, and us theirs. And you heal together. You go on that journey together. That to me is the right relationship, is the one that can go on the journey with you. And it's a bit redundant to say, but if I was further along on this journey, I would have been able to keep this person. But because I had still had too much stuff, I lost that person. There's like a science fiction element to that, then it's not your person. Your person is someone who can meet you where you're at and grow and heal with you.
The next claim I'm going to address is frame is everything. Never compromise it. So this is the idea that a man has to be dominant and emotionally in control at all times, particularly in a relationship. Never let the woman lead. That his view of what's right and wrong should always be what both people adhere to. There's no compromising. Red pillars believe that once you lose frame, once you're no longer the dominant one, if you submit, plead, apologize, react emotionally to anything, react at all, you instantly lose her respect and her attraction, like permanently. It's over. Now, of all the claims in Red Pill, this is probably the one I'm closest to agreeing with. But let's have a look at what the science says first. Science says, and this comes from Gottman Institute, which is my favorite resource for relationship advice, especially marriage advice. Healthy relationships thrive on mutual flexibility, emotional openness, and negotiation. So rigid control over dynamics, like what people think maintaining frame means, it's often a sign of insecurity. It's borderline abusive, and it correlates highly with relationship dysfunction. Basically, being very controlling in a relationship does not play out well in the long term. I would think that was obvious. The reason I almost agree with this claim is because while I believe frame control is really important, I don't believe frame control is the same thing as controlling other people. It doesn't mean that other people aren't allowed to do what they want and have their own ideas, and that you must be so rigid that nobody can convince you of a better idea. Rigidity is not confidence. Confidence is psychological flexibility, the ability to let go of a belief that no longer serves you, the ability to compromise on a behavior that's not the best interest of your long term, and go for the better option. That doesn't mean that like my way is the highway at all times. That actually leaves you open to missing out on the best opportunities. When I think of frame control, what I mean is I will not allow an unhealthy, abusive, or manipulative person to take me off track. That doesn't mean I always get my way. It means that I have a value system that I am going to be loyal to and committed to, and not allow the approval or validation from someone else to be a more tempting option. But it doesn't mean I always eat what I want for dinner. It doesn't mean that we must do everything I want to do all the time. It doesn't mean that I decide entirely by myself how we raise our child. In fact, one of my values is curiosity, another one is acceptance. In order to live by these values, I have to listen to other people, learn from them, find better ideas that I didn't have myself. Refusing to learn is not frame control. It's just psychological conservatism. It means you've closed your mind. Claim number 6, and this is one of the big ones. Marriage is a trap designed to exploit men. I once said that red pill is not an ideology, it's actually a conspiracy theory. The feminization of the West, conspiracy that, feminism is trying to destroy the West. And this is one of the main ones, the main sort of elements of that. Conspiracy theory is that marriage is the trap. This is the weapon they use. So the belief is that modern marriage only benefits women, disadvantages men, especially when it comes to the legality of it, child custody, financial obligations, and so on. They often refer to divorce statistics to back this up. They refer to family court biases that they see. They basically argue that marriage is high risk and low reward for men today. This is based almost entirely on what they think happens in the United States, and it's based very much on cherry picking certain pieces of evidence and drawing conclusions about that evidence that may not relate to the data. So, while we've got to admit that family court systems definitely have flaws and that it's probably in your advantage to be the mother rather than the father when it comes to custody battles, though there are reasons for this because it's about maintaining the child's normal life, and usually that's with the mother more than it's with the father, and that's why that happens most of the time. Research shows a couple of things about married men. They live longer, they have better health, and they report greater life satisfaction. That doesn't mean it's the only option. It doesn't mean you should get married. But the idea that marriage hurts men is not supported by data.
Now, men need marriage more than women need it. The things that men get from marriage, the sort of stereotypical things, are still really important for the man. But the things stereotypically a woman was getting from the marriage, she now doesn't actually need that stuff from a man. She can kind of get that herself because society's shifted where it's not a case that the woman stays at home and raises the kids all the time. Now the woman's got her own money, her own independence. She can leave you.
I think that's true. For a man, a wife may be the only confidant. That's not true for women. Women have much better social support. But men and women both equally need high quality relationships, which is a different conclusion, really. Both men and women really need committed, loving relationship. But, guys can survive in a relationship that is not as good, and they can get a lot out of it.
Well,
whereas women can't.
They need somebody to, oftentimes, though this is changing, but they need somebody to cook. They need somebody to clean. They need somebody to do their laundry.
Listen to them.
To listen to them, to help them sometimes solve work problems, or at least listen to their stresses.
Getting divorced to somebody who was always a narcissist is very painful. Absolutely. But it depends on what kind of marriage you have. If you have a marriage with a healthy person who you've got a great click with, well, even if you get divorced, it's going to be amicable. You'll probably co-parent well together. You'll remain friends. It's a totally different story. It depends on who you get married to. Divorce rates are actually declining among educated couples, and satisfaction is the highest in egalitarian marriages. That's what the data shows. When I've looked into divorce, I did a whole podcast looking into divorce, all the statistics around it, and it's very clear that the people who get divorced generally did not have a healthy connection. That a healthy connection with good relationship boundaries usually goes the distance. And so it's really about how you manage your relationship more than whether or not you're married. Marriage is really just a party with a cake. It's your relationship that's really important here. In my experience, marriage is like a choice. If you want to do it, do it. If you don't, don't. I wanted to do it because I was scared of making long-term commitments and I wanted to face my fears. I did it for me, not for her. If you're at the point where you think you need to avoid marriage, you want to go men go their own way, or you think you got to get these hard-out prenups with somebody, whatever, then yeah, don't get married if that's the way you feel about it. Because you're not in a good place to get married. You don't have the right level of sort of trust and connection with someone to be safe with them. And maybe you're right. Maybe you need to have a look at who your partner is if you don't feel safe to make a long-term commitment to them. That's fine. You don't have to. But if you do marry someone who's really good for you, you will live longer and healthier and be more satisfied according to the data. Why do men believe marriage is a trap? I think it's because they have a close look at the data of when it goes wrong. They see that 55 or so percent of marriages in the United States end in divorce, which is true. They don't look at India where it's 1%, or they don't look at the other countries where the percentages are much lower. They don't look at the fact that a lot of this percentages is aggravated by the fact that most people who do get divorced more than once. So they get married two, three, sometimes four, five, six times, and each of those gets included in the statistics. That the people who get married just once and stay married don't have as much weight in those findings as the people who repeatedly get divorced. In other words, the people who are not good at maintaining long-term healthy relationships for whatever reasons. We look at cases where, the custody went against the father and he was alienated from the kid. And yes, that happens and it's fucking horrible, but not in a majority of cases. In a majority of cases, custody is settled out of court amicably. If it goes to court, you've already got problems. But of course, they don't measure the amount of people who settle this and co-parent well. They just measure the ones that went to court. And so you're going to get very skewed data. Not untruthful data, but skewed. And this is one of the problems with red pills is like half the stuff they're looking at is true, but it's out of context. Yes, there are people who steal the kids away and never let the father see them again, even though he's a good guy. Yeah, that happens. But in a majority of cases, it doesn't. But we don't measure that majority. So it's not that it does or doesn't happen. It depends who you're with, and you're actually more safe than unsafe depending on your choices around women. But you don't need to get married. In fact, I don't think you should even consider getting married unless you get to a place where you both have a secure attachment with each other. You know that even if you did get divorced, it would be amicable. And the only reason you get divorced is because over time you just fell out of love with each other, that you'd never do anything to hurt each other, that you're good at sharing finances, you're good at talking things through, you can set good boundaries, you both put equal effort into the relationship. If you do all of that, you don't need to worry about a divorce being ugly. And the number one thing I have to say is nobody's fucking forcing you to get married. So the idea that marriage is this trap, don't step into it if you feel that way. So you don't have to worry about it. Oh, society's pressuring me. With what? Words? If you don't want to do something, don't do it. Period. And if your missus is pressuring you to do it and you don't want to, say, look, stop talking about this or we're going to break up. Take responsibility for your decision making. Take responsibility for your preferences. Set boundaries with people. It doesn't matter what everyone else does. You don't have to do it too. If you feel forced, that's because you are being weak with your boundaries. Nobody is actually going to force you to do this. Next claim. Feminism has ruined gender dynamics. This is an interesting one. So basically it's this idea that feminism has led women to become entitled, masculine, disrespectful towards traditional male roles and positions, that women are now doing things that only men should do, and feminism won the battle a long time ago and now they're just greedy and they're taking everything they can, which I agree with to some extent, at least the hardcore feminists. They blame feminism for the rise in female promiscuity. They talk about body counts all the time, don't they? They think that's a very big deal. The rise in divorce, and it's true, feminism has increased divorce because now women don't stay if they don't want to. And of course, what they call the decline of femininity. So they think that, women are just becoming more masculine, basically. We're not getting that nice feminine, barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, give you a blowjob anytime you want kind of woman that they think actually exists. So let's have a look at this one, because I'm actually not a big fan of feminism. I basically see feminism and red pill as opposite ends of a spectrum, and both ends are crazy, and that sanity is somewhere in the middle. So in a way, we see eye to eye on the idea that feminism is, the way it's practiced these days is unhealthy and unhelpful. Agreed. I agree that women in Western countries do have full legal rights that are equivalent to men, that there is nothing that they're not allowed to do that a man is. So I don't know what the legal complaints are. But I also agree with feminists that you're most likely to be raped by a man, you're most likely to be sexually abused by a man, that even though men are also abused and hit, it's by other men for the most part, that a man is way more of a threat to a woman than vice versa. Absolutely think that. Now, I've got to be tentative around the science around this because, in my opinion, I do believe that many scientific fields have been infiltrated by the kind of diversity hype, and that we're getting some studies that aren't quite legit coming out. And it's hard to tell what effect feminism really has because it all comes out as positive and it just seems a little bit sycophantic to me. But basically, what it says is that a man who has what you might call feminist views and that he likes women, thinks that they deserve equal rights, treats them with respect, that kind of thing. Generally, they're going to have healthier sex lives, more respectful partnerships. And while what I do is I take away the word feminism and just say love of women. Okay, I'd say men who love women, not misogynists, but not like nice guy pseudo male feminists who worship women, but a man who thinks of a woman as valuable as himself, an equal. That guy's going to do well with women, really well, and not just pick up the deranged drug addict at the nightclub well, but like women are going to adore this man, recommend him to their friends, want him to meet their family. Like kindness actually scores very high in attraction factors when you look at proper science. It doesn't mean that you go too far the other way, that the woman makes all the decisions. This is what a nice guy will do. He'll become like an uber feminist, where it's like he lets the woman have everything she wants. She makes all the decisions. She has to initiate sex every time. I do believe that like you need some roles in the relationship. It doesn't mean you need to always follow traditional roles, but you need to find a dynamic that works between the two of you. Somebody's got to be masculine, someone's got to be feminine. You don't both have to stay that way the whole time, but in context, one needs to be one and the other needs to be the other. You might get a guy who's really dominant in the bedroom, but the wife is really dominant when it comes to choosing how to parent the child. Or you might get the guy who does the outside work and the girl does the inside work for the house, or the other way around. Right? You might get the girl as the breadwinner and the guy raises the children. That's fine. Just look at Bluey. That's a great example of that. It doesn't matter as long as there's that dynamic of masculine and feminine so that there's a kind of completeness of all the traits we need for a healthy psyche for all the people in the house. That's what I believe anyway. I do believe that the hardcore version of feminism is harmful in the same way that I believe that red pill is harmful, is that this cherry-picked loud voices of the most kind of devoted, most dogmatic people on either side of the fence, drowning out the more rational voices somewhere in the middle that are more nuanced and wise. Claim number 8, women are not capable of loving men unconditionally. This is a big one.
Only women, children, and dogs are loved unconditionally. Women, children, and dogs are loved unconditionally. A man is only loved under the condition that he provides some.
He did that special shortly after getting divorced, so we can see where his mind was at the time of saying something like that. This is, in my opinion, probably the least accurate belief in red pill ideology. So what the belief really says is that a woman's love is always conditional on a man's status, his power, his ability to provide, these kind of like measurements of value. And they often contrast this with like a man will love a woman no matter what she is. So they'll always say they'll have their OnlyFans prostitutes in the podcast, and they'll say, would you date a man who's under 6 foot and doesn't earn 100 grand? And oh my God, I never would because I'm one of the worst, most damaged kind of women there are. But you only interview me. And then they'll go, well, I would go out with a girl even if she was working at McDonald's as long as she's hot, right? Like as if they're these noble people and that female love is transactional and men are just unconditionally loving. I don't know why anyone buys this argument. It's got to be the most flawed. Firstly, unconditional love is rare for many relationships. Man, woman, woman, man, woman, woman, man, man, parent, child. There's very few people on this planet, I think, who are capable of unconditional love. But if anyone is, it's probably a mother to her child. The science says that it's all about attachment theory, that if you can have a secure attachment, then you can love unconditionally. But most people don't. Most men and women don't. Romantic love is built on mutual respect, trust, effort, and it's got nothing to do with gender. This is what the science says. Basically, love becomes transactional when you don't know how to love. when you're needy or controlling and obsessive and possessive, then it's going to be based on you've got to give me what I need for me to love you. Most of us, well, many of us were raised like that. You had to earn love from your parents, that you'd lose love if you disappointed them. We came to equate love and approval as being the same thing, which is devastating. And this is where my heart breaks for red pill followers, is because if they believe this, it tells me a lot about what their childhood was like, that they were not loved unconditionally, that they don't know what it's like to be loved unconditionally. And it's heartbreaking to think that there are people who are going to go whole lives without having that experience, because I think it might be the best experience you can have, to be loved unconditionally. I can't think of something that's probably more satisfying and gives life more meaning than that. And to give that love unconditionally as well. To be able to love someone and know, like, no matter what they did, the love wouldn't change. To know that I could disapprove of their behavior, but it wouldn't hurt the love that I have for them. To have that kind of love for someone, very rare. So it's not so much that women are incapable of loving men unconditionally, it's more like humans find it very hard to engage in unconditional love in general. And so if you only look at one group, you're going to think that that group has a problem with it. But then you look at the other group and like, not so good either. I mean, these guys who will often be arguing with a woman on one of these red pill podcasts saying, oh, you only love a guy if he's this, that, and the other. That same guy within minutes of this will also make a claim that his woman has to be feminine and she has to like be a peaceful person and she has to love sucking his dick and she has to be hot. It's like, well, you got conditions too, bruh. So, it's a bit of the pot calling the kettle fucking incapable of unconditional love, isn't it? This is a really hard one for people. I feel for them, and I think, there's no higher pursuit in life than to learn how to achieve this. And I think the way to achieve it, as talked about when you look into things like a secure attachment style, is you have to make it that you don't need anything from anyone else. And I don't mean the materialistic shit. If you're still focused on the materialistic shit, you got problems. But even the more deeper stuff, meaning in life, sense of fulfillment with who you are as a person, loneliness, these are problems you solve by yourself, not with another person. It's not somebody else's job to provide for those needs. You need to be getting into some sort of philosophy. You need to be practicing valued living, looking into your integrity. You need to find a way to have a good relationship with yourself so that you don't need someone else to do it. And then you go and find someone else from that place and you can love them for free. And because you'll be so healthy, you'll only find other people who are like that or who are almost like that, and they'll get that last little booster from you. There's nothing wrong with having an interdependence with your partner where you support each other and lean on each other. But you can't have it where if they step away, you fall down. Just going to quickly interrupt this message to tell you about a great opportunity for you. Now, if you're the kind of person who wants to live with integrity and become really confident and socially adept, then I'd like to invite you to come and join my Brojo community on School. This is the premier free community for people who want to build their confidence, become socially adept, and learn to live with pure integrity. As a member, you'll gain access to comprehensive discussions on how to be more confident, courses and coaching and support from senior members to help you develop your progress on your specific goals. Our members have quite literally transformed their lives. We really focus on what actually works and gets results, and we make sure we stick with you until you get those results. And as a bonus for joining, you'll actually get my Nice Guy Recovery and Confidence Building course absolutely free. So join us today to start your journey towards unbreakable self-confidence. Click on the link below or search for Brojo School online, and we'll see you in there. Claim number 9, red pill is the only path to male freedom. Classic Andrew Tate line, escape the matrix. The red pill is the waking up, seeing the truth of society, the lies about romance, monogamy, equality, and it's a harsh truth that will set you free. And, the blue pill delusion of romantic idealism from Disney is the matrix that you're plugged in, you don't know. It's a great sell if you're somebody who profits off the red pill ideology. Hey guys, making some cash over there on those podcasts, aren't you? Well, it's just not true. Scientifically, it's untrue. All the major studies that have looked into the well-being of people who follow manospheric type beliefs find that they are largely paranoid, misogynistic, emotionally isolated, poorer mental health, poor relationship outcomes. They just don't do very well. Now, some of them do succeed in a materialistic sense. They get laid a lot. They might dominate their wife and totally control their household. But if I was to run them through some mental health scan, they would come out looking pretty grim. I don't know what the best path is for quality of life. I know what I've found and I believe in it. I'm not saying that I'm the only person who's found the right thing. I think there are many paths. I just don't think red pill is one of them. I mean, red pill essentially comes from a place of fear and paranoia and hate. I don't know how that could lead to the best possible outcomes. I don't know why you draw a conclusion that a place that's so full, like if you've ever watched one of their podcasts, especially those group ones where it's like there's the dudes who think they're alphas, and then there's the prostitutes they brought in to represent all women and so on. You just watch it, you're like, God, you guys are so fucking bitter. You're so hate-filled. You take triumph over every time you score a point on a woman, you make her feel bad. You're like, haha, celebrating. Like, what kind of person, what kind of personality enjoys degrading as somebody else? Like, how poorly must you be doing if you get your jollies over making women look bad? That can't be the best path. That can't be like the most enlightened, most truthful path to a high quality of life. And that's who this podcast is really for, is the people who have been into red pill stuff. Just to get you to stop and ask yourself, how's it going? How's your mental health? How's your confidence? How's your satisfaction with life? How healthy are your relationships? Has your career taken off? Are you doing well? If you are, great. Stop listening to me. Keep doing what you're doing. If not, maybe this shit doesn't work. I often think of it like those pyramid schemes. You know, there's like the top 3% are super rich and everyone else is actually poor and nobody wants to talk about it. All those multi-level marketing schemes. Red Pill's like that. The guys running the podcast and all that, they seem to be doing well. They're not, but they seem to be. And then everyone else below them is trying to get up to that position while they're actually ignoring the fact that they're struggling and suffering and nothing's really working out for them. I used to see that when I was deep in the pickup artist thing. You know, there was a few of us who did well with women, and there were thousands of others who didn't, all using the same systems. And we tell them, oh, you're doing it wrong. And it's really like, well, maybe the system isn't very good. I truly believe that freedom comes from authenticity and integrity, from developing psychological flexibility, emotional resilience, secure attachment style, in other words, self-confidence. It's not about control or fear. It's not about hate. I'm not going to say something cheesy that it's about love. I'd say it's more about mental stability. It's about figuring out who you are, who you should be, holding yourself to account to live by that, to have those values and to live according to them, to constantly impress yourself with your behavior, not your results, but your behavior, to be the person you wish people would be, right? To set the example, to be the role model, not to be attached and needy to other people, to need their approval and validation to determine if you're a good person, to prove you're a good person by shagging the hottest girl and bragging about it to your mates. That's not a person doing well. That's a very damaged person who's doing very poorly. Now, 10th belief that I was just going to address real quickly is the idea all women are the same. I don't even need to look at the science for this one. It's one of the most ridiculous claims ever. What you'll notice if you ever hear a red pillar speaking about men and women, they don't even use the word all anymore, even though they have an acronym, AWATS, all women are the same. That's how, like, that much they believe in it, they've got an acronym for it. But it's more they'll just say men are, women are. They just beg the question of nuance, of context, anything like that. They don't say some women are, they don't even say most women. A lot of the time they just say woman, which is one of the most ridiculous things, and it tells you just how untrustworthy all of their beliefs around relationships and dynamics between men and women must be, because how blind and vague and cherry-picked and biased your belief system has to be to think that you can clump an entire gender, billions of people, into a group and say they're all basically the same. It is ridiculous. There are women out there who are mechanics, there are others who are ballerinas. There are women out there who only date black guys, there are women out there who only date white guys. There are women out there who are really caring and empathetic and soft, and there are women out there fighting in the UFC. There are so many variations that no two are exactly the same, that they all have slightly different preferences, slightly different tendencies. And yes, you can cluster them into groups and come up with averages and tendencies that seem to be this and that, but what about all the exceptions? Let's say you get a study that says 77% of women are X. You're like, okay, it's an accurate study. And you get another one that says 60% of women are Y. And you're like, oh, okay, very good. Well, what happens when you get both of those groups of women together? How many of the 70 are in the 40 and the 60 and the... And then you add another study and another. Here's a little mental experiment you can do. Imagine you got a room full of 100 women. You get them all to stand up. And then you just start yelling out traits and they have to sit down every time they don't have that trait. Right? So really nurturing. A few of them sit down. The rest still nurturing, so stand up. And then you go sexually promiscuous, and a few more sit down, assuming they're honest. And the rest standing up. How many traits would you need to call out before they're all sitting down? Do you think that you could yell all day different traits and the whole room would just stay standing? That they'd all be the same? Nah. It wouldn't take long before you had eliminated everyone, that there would be no woman in there that has all the so-called female traits. And you do the same thing with men. And in fact, you could mix the group with men and women, call out random traits that are masculine and feminine, and a mixture of men and women would sit down. That there'd be men with lots of feminine traits and there'd be women with lots of masculine traits and so on. The idea that everyone's the same is such an irresponsible and frankly stupid view of the world that anybody who has the view, the AWAT's view, cannot be trusted with anything else they say about evolutionary psychology, neuroscience, social dynamics. Because nobody with like a wise view of humanity and neurology would ever have such a strong bias like that. They'd say, it depends on this, it depends on that. Which woman are you talking about specifically? So on and so forth. So the fact that they constantly do this throughout all of their literature, all of their videos, all of their Reddit posts, tells you that, like, if that's the foundation of their belief system, then all the rest must be significantly flawed. So, I expect to get some hate on this one, but, you know, what else would you expect from such a healthy ideology? I put this out there because if you actually take the blinders off and have a look for yourself, you don't need to listen to me, go look for yourself. Get ChatGPT out and say, this is what I believe because red pill, prove me wrong, and see what comes up and actually have a look into what comes up. Psychological flexibility. Get a bit more resilient with your beliefs. Allow yourself to be a bit more nuanced, a bit wiser, more intelligent. Because the key thing I want to end with, the question I want you guys to ask yourselves is, if red pill is true, if it really is revealing the matrix, then how come following it doesn't work for most people? How come it doesn't improve their quality of life? Thank you so much for listening. I hope to make this the last thing I ever talk about when it comes to red pill. I want to focus on just healthier approaches. But now that I've put this out there, I can shut up about it. Are you a nice guy or people pleaser who wishes they were more assertive, more honest, and better respected by others? Since 2013, I've been helping people just like you discover their integrity and apply it courageously to build deep and meaningful connections, get respected by others, and become the confident person you've always wanted to be. Imagine being able to speak your mind without worrying what other people will think or worrying that it's the right thing to say, and being able to assertively stand up for yourself and your loved ones. Imagine never feeling the need to apologize for who you are or what you want, and being able to live carefree without shame or the I'm not good enough story in your head. Imagine going to bed knowing that you courageously took every opportunity available to you and you've got no regrets because you always know what you should be doing in every situation. I'm so confident in my ability to help people like you unleash your highest level of self-worth that I give people a free coaching session to test what I'm doing. In this 1 hour session, we will uncover the biggest barrier to your confidence, whether it's an awareness problem, you don't know what you should be doing differently, or it's a courage problem, you know what you should be doing, but you find it too intimidating. I will guide you to make a breakthrough with your behavior to get through that barrier in a powerful way without feeling terrified and without destroying everything you love. I've had some people find this first session so powerful that I never hear from them again simply because they didn't need anything more after that. It launched them into the highest level of confidence that they've ever experienced. And if that's the result you get, I'm good with that. One client put it, this session was more valuable to me than 3 years of therapy combined. So if you're tired of trying to keep everybody happy, and you're sick of worrying what other people think of you, and you're concerned that your people-pleasing and conflict avoidance is going to damage your relationships, then come and have a talk with me. Worst case scenario, you get to experience what it's like to talk with someone who actually understands what it's like to be you. I've lived the nice guy experience for decades. I know it inside and out. I know that pain. Case scenario, and very likely, you will have such a powerful insight into a behavioral change that you can make in the next 24 hours to significantly improve your confidence, relationships, and career. All I ask is that you be honest, open to change, and willing to try something new. Why wait another 10 years to discover confidence when you can do it today? Fill out the brief form below to apply for a trial coaching session. And do this quickly because there are limited spots each month. And then I'll get back to you to book in a time to talk.